The planet was called Karenfor, but people who knew about it gave it another name, a death world. Everything on it wanted to kill you. The air was hot and thick with dust. The storms were loud and never stopped. Lightning cracked the sky like a whip. The plants were sharp and spat acid. The animals were worse, huge, fast, and hungry. No one came here unless they were desperate or unlucky. Sergeant Mason Reyes was very unlucky. He had been part of a military mission, a small group of human soldiers sent to scout this planet, but something went wrong. Their ship got hit by something just before landing. The engines failed. The ship came down fast, crashing into the side of a mountain. Mason had been thrown from the wreck. When he woke up, he was the only one still alive. The rest of his team was dead, burned, crushed, gone. He was stranded, alone, and had no way to call for help. Days turned into weeks. Mason moved from cave to cave, always staying low and hiding from the creatures that hunted at night. He ate strange fruit, drank rainwater when he could find it, and fixed his gear with pieces from the broken ship. He used a small scanner to check for signals, but there was never anything, only silence. And monsters. One night, while hiding inside a crumbling rock shelter, his scanner started to beep. It had picked up a signal, faint, old, but real. Mason quickly pulled it up and played it back. It was in an alien language, but the translator caught two words: humans, help. He stared at the screen, not sure what to think. It had to be a trick. There were no humans here. Maybe some alien creature had copied their language. Or maybe the signal was just an echo, bouncing around the planet for years. Still, he couldn't ignore it. It might be the only chance to survive. Mason checked his gear, loaded his rifle, and started moving. The signal came from the other side of a canyon where jagged black rocks jutted out like teeth. The trip took hours. He climbed over broken cliffs and crossed a dried-up riverbed full of bones. He stopped once to hide from a flying beast with glass wings and a tail like a spear. Finally, he reached the place. A ruined alien outpost, old, covered in ash and moss. Some of it had sunk into the ground. It looked like no one had been there for hundreds of years. He walked carefully inside. The floor was cracked. The walls were covered in glowing glyphs, strange symbols he didn't understand. In the middle of the room stood a tall, smooth console. It looked like it was still working. As Mason stepped closer, the console lit up and made a deep humming sound. He jumped back, rifle ready. Then the console's lights grew brighter and a beam of blue light shot straight into the sky. It was loud and sudden. The ground shook beneath him. Mason's heart dropped. No, he whispered. That wasn't just a signal. It was a flare. A call to anyone watching from orbit or space. It was a beacon. He didn't know who would answer it, or what. Then the ground shook again. A deep, thunderous sound rolled through the ruins. Something huge was moving outside. Mason turned, rifle up. Dust fell from the ceiling. The entrance was dark, but something blocked the light, something big. Slowly, it stepped into view. It had 6 glowing red eyes, sharp bone-like armor, and a body that looked like it had been stitched together from other monsters. Fire flickered between its jaws. It stood twice as tall as a tank. It growled low, and the heat from its breath made the walls sweat. Mason didn't move. He didn't breathe. His finger was on the trigger, and just like that, he realized. The signal wasn't a call for help from a trapped alien. It was a warning, and now the whole planet knew exactly where he was. Mason didn't wait to see what the monster would do. As soon as it stepped into the room, he turned and ran. The beast roared, loud enough to shake the walls and make the floor crack. Mason jumped over broken metal and sprinted through the ruins as fire burst from the creature's mouth, turning stone into ash behind him. He didn't stop. He couldn't. One wrong move and he'd be dead. The monster smashed through the walls like they were paper. Mason threw a flare over his shoulder to distract it, then dove off a ledge into a canyon below. He hit the ground hard but kept going. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs shook. He reached a fast-moving river and jumped in without thinking. The water was freezing cold and full of strange colors, but it pulled him away from the creature. He held his breath as long as he could, then burst out of the water gasping. His body felt like it was on fire, his skin stinging from the river's poison. But he was alive. The river carried him far, dropping him near a shore made of black sand. He crawled out, shaking and coughing, and collapsed on the ground. For a few moments he just lay there, staring at the red sky. But then something strange happened. The air shimmered, and a shadow passed over him. Not a creature, but something flying. He looked up. His eyes widened. Ships. Dozens of them. Human ships, sleek, dark, and covered in heavy weapons. Dropships fell from the sky, slamming into the ground and opening like metal flowers. Soldiers in exosuits stepped out, tall and glowing with armor. Tank-like walkers followed, legs hissing as they stomped across the sand. Mason couldn't believe it. They came. They actually came, he whispered. He stood and stumbled toward the nearest squad. A soldier in a full helmet turned toward him, scanning him with a glowing visor. Mason raised his hands and shouted, "I sent the signal." "You got my signal." The soldier tilted his head. "You? No, we didn't come for you," Mason blinked. "What?" The soldier spoke again calmly. "We intercepted an alien SOS. It was broadcasting across several systems. We thought it might be a trap, but we couldn't ignore it. The message only said one thing: humans, help. EXTINCTION, humans, help, extinction. Over and over." Mason's heart dropped. He looked around. Then why send a whole fleet? The soldier's voice turned serious. "Because the word extinction changes everything." Before Mason could say more, a loud boom cut through the air. One of the tanks behind them exploded, sending metal flying. The sky darkened again, this time not from clouds, but from creatures, thousands of them, winged beasts with glowing spines and screaming. Mouths poured out of a giant crack in the canyon wall. They looked like flying nightmares, sharp, fast, and angry. The soldiers raised their weapons and fired. Plasma bolts filled the air, turning the sky into a light show of red and blue. The monsters shrieked and dove, smashing into soldiers, tearing through armor, burning everything. The ground shook again. Not from explosions, but from something underneath. Mason turned. Behind the flying beasts, the earth was breaking apart, huge pieces of stone rising and falling. A deep rumble echoed across the land. Something enormous was waking up beneath them. A long crack split the land open like a mouth. From inside, a strange red glow rose, followed by a thick cloud of steam and ash. And then Mason saw a dot. It wasn't just more monsters coming from the crack. It was machines. Drones. Alien machines shaped like spiders, snakes, and wheels, all with glowing red lights and sharp limbs. They crawled out by the hundreds, followed by something much worse. A giant shape made of black metal, half buried, now slowly rising. Mason's eyes went wide. "That's not just part of the planet," he said, almost to himself. "It is." The planet. The ground beneath his feet shook harder. Metal claws tore out of the soil. The red light in the sky turned brighter. A deep, booming voice echoed through the air, not spoken through mouths, but through the ground itself. "Extinction protocol activated. All life must be purged." Mason backed away. The other soldiers turned toward him, confused. "What's happening?" Someone shouted. He pointed toward the growing crack. That alien signal. It wasn't just a call for help. It was a warning. This planet, this whole place, it's alive. The soldier who first scanned him spoke again. "You're saying the planet is what? A machine?" Mason nodded slowly. "Worse. It's a weapon. Something left behind a long time ago. Something built to kill everything, including us." More ships exploded above as giant beams of energy shot from the cracks in the ground, hitting orbit and slicing through the human fleet. Smoke and fire fell like rain. Mason looked around. The soldiers were still fighting, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and most of them didn't even know why. He turned to the soldier next to him. "We need to shut it down. There has to be a core, something running. This whole system," the soldier frowned. "And how do we find it?" Mason reached into his pocket and pulled out the alien beacon he found earlier. It was still glowing, still warm. "I think it wants us to." Everything was falling apart. The sky burned. The ground split open. Soldiers screamed over the sound of gunfire and crashing metal. Giant flying beasts attacked from above, while alien machines crawled from the cracks below. Mason Reyes had seen war before, but this was something else. This was the end of everything. And the worst part was, it wasn't just a planet filled with monsters. The planet itself was alive. Karen 4 was not just deadly because of its wild creatures or violent storms. It was deadly because it had been built that way. The cracked earth revealed a huge alien structure underneath, black metal glowing red, stretching for miles in every direction. It had gears, power lines, towers, and spinning cores. It looked ancient and massive, like a sleeping god was finally waking up. The monsters weren't acting wild anymore either. They moved in perfect order, flying and running like soldiers. Mason now understood they weren't animals. They were part of the planet's defense system. They were weapons. As the human soldiers fought for their lives, Mason pulled the alien beacon out of his gear again. It still pulsed with light, guiding him. The moment he touched it, his vision blurred. Strange symbols filled his eyes. He felt cold and dizzy. And then he saw it, a flash of memories that weren't his. Alien cities burning, a war in the stars, giant ships exploding, and something even worse, a virus that spread across worlds, bringing chaos and death. Charon-4 had been built by an ancient race to stop that virus, to stop life itself. To them, living things were the infection. The world had been designed as a prison, a trap, and a weapon. Anything that landed on it would be destroyed. Anything that tried to leave would be hunted down. And now the system was awake again. Because humans had arrived. Suddenly, the ground nearby exploded as a mechanical creature the size of a house burst out, smashing two soldiers with its massive claws. Mason dove for cover behind a broken wall, pulling a younger soldier down with him. "We have to shut this thing down," Mason shouted. "There's a control core somewhere deep underground." "That's where it's all coming from." The young soldier looked terrified. "How do you know that?" "I don't," Mason said, "but this thing does." He held up the glowing beacon dot then. A voice rumbled through the air again. It wasn't spoken through mouths. It came from the planet itself. It was cold, powerful, and full of hate. Containment breach. All biological life forms detected. Initiate total extermination. Massive. Energy cannons rose from the cracked earth. They aimed at the sky and fired. The blasts were like lightning, thick beams of red that sliced through the clouds and blew up human ships in orbit. Mason watched in horror as the fleet above was destroyed in seconds. The few ships still flying tried to escape, but the planets' defense grid tracked them and hit them one by one. Smoke and debris fell from the sky like ash dot back on the ground. The battle grew worse. The air was thick with smoke. Plasma fire lit up the darkness. Human soldiers were doing their best, but they were falling fast. The alien machines kept coming, wave after wave, with no fear and no mercy. Mason knew they couldn't fight forever. He had one chance: reach the control core and shut down the system. If he failed, Earth might be next. With a small team of survivors, maybe 7 soldiers in total, Mason followed the beacon through broken tunnels and burning forests. They crossed a swamp of green acid and climbed down into a canyon full of glowing mushrooms that hissed when touched. They were attacked again and again. One soldier was pulled into a hole by snake-like cables. Another was crushed by a machine shaped like a metal crab. But Mason kept moving. He had to. The beacon was pulling him towards something deeper. Finally, they found it, a chamber glowing with power hidden beneath the planet's crust. In the center was a giant black sphere floating in the air. It pulsed with red light and strange. Tendrils of energy reached out from it, controlling everything around them. This was the core, the brain of the planet. Mason stepped closer, but the air around it was heavy and full of pressure. His ears rang. His skin burned. The beacon in. His hand grew hotter. He turned to the others. "This is it. The only way to stop the planet. But how do we shut it down?" One of the last soldiers asked, sweating and out of breath. "I think we don't," Mason said. "I think we have to ask it." Before anyone could stop him, he pushed the beacon into his own chest plate right near his heart. It clicked. That alien device pierced his armor, then his skin. Spikes of light shot into his body. He screamed as his eyes rolled back. His body glowed with blue light. He dropped to his knees, shaking violently. "Mason!" One of the soldiers shouted. Then Mason stood up. His eyes were glowing blue. His voice was strange, deep and layered, like 2 voices speaking at once. "I see it all now," he said. "The wars, the fear, the programming, this place. It's following orders that were written 1 billion years ago." He turned toward the core. "I'm going to change the code." Mason stood in front of the glowing black sphere, his body lit up with blue energy. His eyes no longer looked human, they burned like twin stars. The alien beacon had done something to him. It wasn't just a signal anymore. It had changed him. Now, Mason was connected to the core of the planet. He could feel it, hear it, understand it. He felt its thoughts like heavy thunder inside his skull. It was cold, ancient, and powerful. It had one goal: destroy all living things. The other. Soldiers stood behind him, weapons raised, unsure what to do. One of them stepped forward. "Mason, are you still you?" He turned slowly, his glowing eyes meeting theirs. His voice was different, calm but echoing, like it came from deep inside the ground. "I'm still me, but I see what this place was built for. I see the code. I see the command. The planet thinks we're a disease." The chamber shook as more machines stirred to life. The glowing red sphere in the middle of the room pulsed. Like a heart, strange, ghost-like images floated in the air, scenes from ancient times. Alien civilizations falling, ships burning, whole planets crumbling into dust. Mason pointed to the visions. This weapon was made by an old race. They feared a spreading infection, a kind of life that destroyed everything. So they created this world to stop it, a trap, a final defense. But now it thinks we're the enemy. One of the soldiers shouted, "Then shut it down, kill the core." But Mason shook his head. "It's not that simple. If we destroy the core without rewriting the code, the entire planet will explode, and the blast could wipe out half the system. Millions would die." Another soldier asked, "Can you rewrite it? Can you stop it?" Mason looked back at the floating sphere. "Yes, but I'll need to link my mind fully. I'll have to give it a new purpose, a new rule, something it can follow." He stepped closer to the core. The blue light from his chest reached out like fingers. The red glow of the sphere began to fade, turning purple, then blue. Sparks flew. The walls shook. A loud, deep voice filled the air again, rumbling from the ground. "Command conflict detected. New input attempting override. Biological entity not authorized." Mason clenched his fists. "I am authorized now. I carry the beacon. I carry the key." The voice spoke again, louder this time. "Security breach. Defense systems increasing." Suddenly, the chamber was filled with movement. Massive machines dropped from the ceiling, huge metal golems with spinning blades and laser cannons. They surrounded Mason and the others. The soldiers fired, trying to hold them off. One screamed as a blade tore through his armor. Another was grabbed by a mechanical claw and thrown against the wall. Mason ignored the chaos. He focused on the code flowing into his mind. Lines of alien language scrolled across his vision. It was like trying to rewrite the laws of nature. The core fought back, trying to push him out, trying to erase his thoughts. His nose bled, his legs shook. But he kept going. He spoke out loud, voice shaking. "New command. Stop extermination. Protocol. End extinction order. Replace with new mission. Protect life, not destroy it." The red lights around the room blinked. For a moment, the machines froze. The voice in the ground paused. The giant metal beast stood still. Then the voice returned, slower this time. "Processing ... processing. Command accepted. New directive uploaded. Updating primary protocol. The lights turned from red to blue. All at once, the machine shut down. The flying beasts outside stopped attacking. The ground stopped shaking. The air became quiet. A soft hum replaced the roar of war. The soldiers stared wide-eyed. The monsters that had been trying to kill them were now still, silent, peaceful. Mason dropped to his knees. Smoke rose from his chest where the beacon had burned into him. His skin was pale, his hands shaking. One of the surviving soldiers ran to him. "You did it. You actually did it," Mason smiled weakly. "Yeah. But I don't think I'm going home." "What do you mean?" Mason looked at the glowing core. "The connection won't break. I'm part of it now. I can't leave. If I do, the command might break and the world will return to what it was." The soldier frowned. "So, you're the new command?" Mason nodded. "I am." The soldier stepped back, giving him a slow salute. "Thank you." Mason looked around one last time. The giant chamber pulsed with calm blue light now. Outside, the planet was still dangerous. The storm still raged, the land still wild. But it was no longer trying to kill everything. It had changed. And so had he. The soldiers left the chamber and returned to what was left of their ships. Some of the fleet had survived. They would tell Earth what had happened here. They would tell the story of how a dead world came back to life and how one man became part of it. Back inside, Mason sat beside the core. He could feel everything now. The trees, the wind, even the creatures crawling underground. He didn't feel fear anymore, only peace. But then, just as he closed his eyes, he felt something else. Far out in space. Moving. Coming closer. Not human. Not friendly. Something worse than the death world. Mason opened his eyes. They glowed brighter than ever. "I guess my job's not done yet."